How much time does Trump have left? Because from beyond the grave, Jeffrey Epstein has accused Trump, and there is a smoking gun. Maybe 4 of them. And now Trump and his Republicans, especially Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, and his MAGA enablers and his Fox News whores, are complicit in an extraordinary, disgusting cover-up. Again, a cover-up of pedophilia, a cover-up of corruption at Pam Bondi's DOJ, a cover-up of Epstein's crimes, a new cover-up right now playing out in real time as Trump tries to blackmail Republicans into burying the Epstein files, and most of all, a cover-up of Trump's guilt. Of the allegations that one of Epstein's female victims, quote, spent hours at Epstein's house with Trump, unquote, that Trump was, quote, that dog that hasn't barked, and, quote, has never once been mentioned. Those specific allegations made by Jeffrey Epstein in 2011 and acknowledged by Ghislaine Maxwell minutes later by email. Trump is guilty. In an unusual twist, we will find out what he is guilty of later. But Epstein has provided the evidence that almost everything Trump has said about Epstein and him is not true. And now, if Trump follows the path he has been on for several months and pardons Maxwell or commutes her sentence, it could very easily cost him his presidency. Because a pardon or commutation for her would be his confession. And now, as Trump panics and twice insists it's all a hoax, while his enablers urgently meet in the White House, we must ask, what is next? What is in the Epstein files that the Republicans in the House who have been blocking their release and those in the Senate who will try to, what is it that they are so terrified by if it wasn't what was released yesterday? And we must ask, now that Epstein has managed to convict Trump of at least a decades-long cover-up, to what lengths will Trump go to stop the release of the files? And we must ask, when will Trump's role in the Epstein crimes, in his past cover-ups of them, in his current cover-up of them, in his cover-up of whatever he is guilty of, when will the true horror of Trump's guilt become so overwhelming, so disqualifying, that Republicans will have to make the choice between covering up for Trump or saving themselves? Because that and that alone is the moment at which those who have enabled Trump for the last decade will become those who will remove Trump. The moment at which his public survival means their extinction, or, if you prefer to put it this way, their public survival means his presidential extinction. How much time does Trump have left before Epstein destroys him? To analyze what was released yesterday by Democrats on the House Oversight Committee, there could be, in fact, as many as 4 smoking guns. The first one, obviously damning, more because it is Epstein questioning with evident astonishment in 2011, 4 years before Trump even considered running for president, astonished that Trump's name had not yet come up related to Epstein's circle. His phrase, the dog that hasn't barked, that is from Sherlock Holmes. That is about a dog that should have reacted negatively to some stranger coming in to steal the horse, only he didn't bark. Therefore, the conclusion was the guy who stole the horse was not a stranger. The dog knew him. That's the dog that hasn't barked. The part about the hours with the redacted victim's name, that's almost less important here because that is probably Virginia Giuffre. The Republicans are loudly proclaiming it's her, and she also did once claim Trump had been gentlemanly towards her. So the relevance of that seems to be more about Trump being in Epstein's home with any of his women victims. There is, however, this line from another email, an Epstein offer to a New York Times reporter. Quote, would you like photos of Donald and girls in bikinis in my kitchen? There is no doubt that Donald is Trump. There's a reference in the same thread with the New York Times reporter to, quote, my 20-year-old girlfriend in 93 that after 2 years I gave to Donald. What did he give to Donald? Photos or the girlfriend? There is a thread about Epstein recounting his interactions with the Russian foreign minister and thug Sergei Lavrov, trying to help Lavrov understand Trump, serving as some sort of consultant to the Russians about how to deal with Trump, which extends the scandal into yet another area that may, in fact, long-term prove far more deleterious to Trump than the Epstein per se sex ring and crimes. And then there is the fourth smoking gun, one that some readers are really hyped up about. Mar-a-Lago, Epstein notes to author Michael Wolff in another email, quote, Trump said he asked me to resign, never a member, ever. Of course he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. Sure is damning sounding, but what if knowing about the girls meant that Trump knew about Epstein recruiting women from Mar-a-Lago, as Trump has claimed, and that he asked Maxwell to stop recruiting from Mar-a-Lago? So that one, I think, is too vague to have much meaning. The other three are not. But then again, all of this is one cube off the tip of the proverbial iceberg. By midday yesterday, Trump had panicked so much that he had twice posted again, calling, I guess, the entire pedophilia scandal and all of the crimes and his cover-up of it. Trump's cover-up of the Epstein files. He called it the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. Say that 20 more times in public, and you will lose what remains of MAGA. And last night, Nick Fuentes, whose words I ordinarily would give no value to whatsoever, declared that MAGA is dead after this. It had also been revealed by midday yesterday that Trump had personally pitched Lauren Boebert on Tuesday to take her name off the discharge petition that will now force the vote compelling the release of the Epstein files. The House vote we have been hearing so much about, the one that the shutdown was really about to keep Adelita Grijalva from being registered as an official member of Congress and being the 218th name on the discharge petition. Yesterday, they ratcheted this up. When Trump's phone calls to Boebert to try to get her to remove her name did not work. There was a crash meeting with Lauren Boebert in the White House in the Situation Room. The Situation Room, you know, where President Obama and his key cabinet members watched the taking out of Osama bin Laden. This time, it was Attorney General Pam Bondi, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, FBI Director Kash Patel, a group that 2 years ago would have been a bad night's panel on a Hannity show. Patel, evidently taking time off from flying to boink his country singer girlfriend on our dime. Obama monitored the death of bin Laden in the Situation Room. Trump's enablers monitored in the Situation Room whether they could convince a congresswoman whose husband allegedly exposed himself to females and was caught on film manipulating a constituent during a play, whether they could convince her the Epstein thing wasn't all that bad. And it didn't work. Annie Carney of the New York Times reported, quote, my understanding is that the relentless pressure campaign that has included carrot, stick, good cop, bad cop has made her even more dug in, suspicious, and convinced there's a conspiracy at play. So unlike Lauren Boebert, they didn't pull it off. Next, Republican leadership has warned the White House to prepare for the deluge. When the vote forced by this discharge petition takes place, the number of House Republicans who will vote for it and thus vote against Trump will be, per Politico's sources, in the dozens. Quote, possibly 100 or more. Now, it is hardly among the foremost atrocities in this disaster, but Attorney General Bondi looks like even more of an idiot now, with her little white notebooks that did not include any of this good stuff, and her deputy, Mr. Todd Blanche, who would have had access to all of these emails released yesterday, and yet based on the transcripts, never asked anything remotely close to being about them when he went to see Ghislaine Maxwell in her Florida penitentiary right before they moved her to Club Fed in Texas. Mr. Blanche now sure sounds like a candidate for disbarment sometime in the near future. As I mentioned earlier, what matters most now is what's next. In the files, in the upcoming public battle over the files, in whatever Trump tries next to stop the files. He cannot win. Clearly, there is something worse in there, and he knows that. Or he would last night have called an immediate press briefing, explained what was meant by those emails that had just been released by those hoaxing Democrats, and he would have said that he was perfectly content with everything else in the Epstein files being put out right now, and hell, why not make it unanimous in the House by acclamation? And he didn't do that. So if the contents are released, he's screwed. But if they're not released, he's also screwed, because he will have to maintain a constant effort to make sure they are not released. A new cover-up, if you will, every effing week. The story not only becomes his 180 from campaigning, promising to release these files, to serving in office, dedicating himself to do everything he can to not release them. It becomes that every day. The one quality to Watergate that no scandal that Trump has faced, the one quality Watergate had that nothing Trump has faced has yet developed, was that every day element. This could be it. We could have started. This could be day 2 of every day with the Epstein Gate files. Now, if you are wondering how it is possible that even a deranged, morals-free, sundowning person like Trump could have so loudly promised to release everything in some files if he knew they included him and would incriminate him and perhaps be fatal to his presidency, there are 2 outside factors to consider. First and biggest, he had to get himself elected last fall. He had to. His other option was to go to prison for life. If he had determined that he could have guaranteed himself election by campaigning on a promise to, once in office, prosecute himself, he would have made that promise. And something that's less political science fiction. It is possible Trump originally, when he made that promise last year, did not know. And his lack of imagination and surfeit of ego did not let him consider the possibility that even just what came out yesterday was in there. I don't know how many lawsuits and depositions he's been involved with. Hundreds, certainly. Maybe it's more than 1,000. Who knows? I imagine at that rate they blur after a while. I did one deposition in one lawsuit in my life. It was 2 days in 2013, and I remember nearly every detail, often in nightmares, and it went really well for me. I thought I knew what the other side would have found in its search of my emails, and for the most part, I was right about that. On the other hand, here is an anecdote that might give you an idea of how easy it is to be wrong about that. Their lawyer asked me about one subject heading on some of my emails to my manager, my agent, and my attorney. He asked me to estimate how many times I use this one phrase as the subject line in an email to those 3 people. I told him I had no good idea. He said he was not expecting a precise answer. He would not be holding me to it. He was just looking to establish a threshold. Was it this many? Was it more than that many? He finally got me to agree to his estimate. When he said between 75 and 100, I said I thought that sounded right. And then I thought I heard my manager laugh involuntarily and very faintly. When we broke for lunch, maybe an hour later, as soon as we got far enough into the hallway for nobody else to hear, my manager and my attorney burst into laughter. "Oh, my God, the subject line number," my manager said. My lawyer laughed again. 75 and 100? The correct answer is you used it 1,243 times. So no, he might not have known. He knows now. And what he does know is that of all the pitfalls facing him right now, the foremost of them is Ghislaine Maxwell. This is a convicted child sex offender, and that is the nicest way to put it. Yet after she gave Todd Blanche the answers that he wanted, she was not only rescued from that prison in Florida, she was basically transferred to a motel. Congressman Jamie Raskin is quoting a whistleblower who says customized meals are delivered to her cell. She has her own private exercise area she can use after hours. She is allowed trips out. She has private meetings with visitors, and snacks are provided by the prison, and the guests can bring in their computers, meaning Maxwell has unmonitored communications with the outside world, including interviews with reporters. Oh, and she has a service puppy and a service warden. She is writing an appeal to Trump for a sentence commutation, and the warden is helping her. And if Trump does commute the sentence, or worse, pardons her, he will inherit the wind. Epstein's email about wanting the recipient to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump, to realize how Trump spent hours with a victim in Epstein's home, to realize that Epstein is surprised he has never been mentioned, that was sent to Ghislaine Maxwell, and her response was, "I have been thinking about that." There are two key answers to two key final questions. What's in the files that's worse? And what does Maxwell know about Trump? And the answers to both of those questions are probably exactly the same. Briefly, there's also, as ever, context. MAGA has been disenchanted yet again by, of all things, a Laura Ingraham interview with Trump. One soundbite in particular in which Ingraham insists that H-1B visas, which fast-track immigrants with special work skills, can't be a priority for Trump's administration. And he says, you also do have to bring in talent. And in her best xenophobic tone, she reminds him, we have plenty of talent. And he dismissively says, no, you don't. No, you don't. And she replies with astonishment, we don't have talented people here. This is not exactly Trump calling Americans untalented, but it's close enough. His supporters are not that bright. Any nuance, any space, any wiggle room between those two statements doesn't exist for them. On top of the fact that they are getting killed at the grocery store and everywhere else. And after they show their government I'm allowed to buy popcorn ID, now they have to find out that it's not America first after all. Kristi Noem followed that Trump comment to Ingraham yesterday with a boast that there are more immigrants than ever becoming citizens, and clearly, unsurprisingly, considering they're all idiots, the MAGAs in office have lost the plot. They have forgotten that they were elected to demonize and expel foreigners. Period. Secondly, the full blame has yet to land exclusively or permanently on Trump. Associated Press and NORC with a new poll. His approval is 36%, a record low, but not terminal. However, in March, 43% of the country approved not of him, but of how Trump was managing the government. That was the phrase used, managing the government. 43% approval is not a lot, but in retrospect, it looks like a landslide because in the new poll from this month, it's down to 33% and just 38% among independents. In other words, 2/3 of the country do not think he is handling, managing, controlling his own government well. Trump is not on his last legs. But the real-life version of the Emperor's New Clothes seems to be reaching its final chapter, if not its final pages. And now we have these Epstein emails, and whatever we don't have yet. And so I ask again, how much time does he have left before Epstein destroys him? A couple of updates on Trump's accelerating dementia or dementia-like illnesses or illness. If you missed it, he now wants to move troops into a place in America that does not exist. Quote, the Miracle Mile shopping center in Chicago, once considered our nation's best, is ready to call it quits unless something is done about murder and crime. Call in the troops fast before it is too late. Just the news, unquote. There is no Miracle Mile shopping center in Chicago. It's possible Trump just dreamt it or hallucinated it or who knows. There is the so-called Magnificent Mile shopping district in Chicago around the Hancock Center and the Wrigley Building and the pre-1871 fire water tower, but it's not a shopping center and it's never been called a shopping center. Except by Trump. Apart from his conflation of the words magnificent and miracle, ask him to repeat those words in the next cognitive test scheduled already for next April. There is a Miracle Mile shopping center in Monroeville, PA, and there's a Miracle Mile shopping center in Vegas, and there's one in L.A., and if Trump wants to send troops to Chicago to protect Monroeville, PA, he's farther gone than we thought. Like, far enough to have once again said the Presidential Medal of Freedom is much better than the Congressional Medal of Honor, because if you get the Congressional Medal of Honor, you could be dead or wounded. Only he said it last Saturday to a local newscaster in Pennsylvania, and it went viral on Veterans Day. On the other hand, in a rare development, and you may want to clip and save me saying this, Trump was actually right about something. The head of BBC News and the head of the entire BBC suddenly resigned after an edit made in a news special that aired more than a year ago was made into a big deal publicly in England. In the edit, two separate clips from Trump's infamous January 6th warm-up speech that preceded his goons' attempt to overthrow the government and kill congressmen, senators, and vice presidents. Trump, of course, has lived his life in that space between trying to inspire others to commit crimes and violence on his behalf and actually getting blamed when the crimes and violence occur. If he has any intelligence at all, it lies in that skill. I didn't do it. I just said it. Well, the BBC's edit eliminated that space, and whereas that might be a good thing from a moral point of view, from a journalistic one, you just can't do what the BBC did. You cannot take two statements made about 50 minutes apart in real life and edit them together so adroitly that it literally changes the meaning, that it sounds like he's saying he and the mob will now go to the Capitol and physically fight like hell, like there was no nuance to it. You can't do that. If I had done that with two sound bites at my college radio station, they would have suspended me in 1975. You can run those two sound bites consecutively, provided you put in something between them. It can be an explanatory sentence. It can be an explanatory hour. It can be just one word like later, but you have to make the distinction, even when you are quoting the devil. It was a day one journalism 101 mistake, or a day one journalism 101 malfunction, dysfunction, attempt to sneak something past the editors. That being said, Trump's response to this was to demand a retraction of the documentary. Again, he's right. They should do that. They should officially retract and kill that documentary. They've already taken it off their website. And he wants an apology. That's the BBC's call. What I would do is the BBC should apologize to all viewers in the world, including Trump, if they want to say that. That, to me, would suffice. We apologize to everyone who has ever lived for our editing mistake. And, of course, he wants money. He wants a bribe, like he got from ABC and CBS, or he'll sue them for $1 billion because they damaged his reputation. This is where the part about an update on Trump's madness comes in. What reputation is that exactly, Sonny? They made it look like you inspired the January 6th insurrection? You did? You've boasted about it. They tried to kill your vice president while carrying giant flags bearing your name. Plus, you're Trump. How could they damage you? How could anybody damage you? It's like the devil suing over a report that it's hot in hell. Plus, there'd have to be malice proven and some indication that the program was shown in America, which it wasn't. But I will tell you this, it's very hard to root for the BBC in this because it is such an odd organization. I had my own run-in with the BBC about 6 years ago over a podcast. The idea that the BBC is not perfect is deeply hurtful to the people who run the BBC, who just are not that realistic about the BBC. Now, for the most part, the BBC's news people are brilliant, impeccable. If they are not the best in the world, they are among the best in the world. But this is a company that once ran an advertisement for the neutrality of its political coverage by having anchor Caddy Kay, who is not one of the best in the world, walk through the streets of Washington past giant graphic representations of words like neutrality and fairness. And she was blathering throughout this promo, insisting that the BBC had never taken a side in any election or any war. And I snorted milk through my nose, and I made a big stink about this little thing in the 40s that you might remember when this Hitler guy was sending bombers to London just to try to blow up the building the BBC was in and bomb its studios and light its newscasters on fire, and how at the time BBC broadcasts were sending secret coded messages to the French resistance. And I said, so the BBC did not take sides in the Nazi war to blow up the BBC. We're supposed to believe this? I don't think I was the only one who complained, but they did stop running the ads once they realized, oh, that's right, we were rooting for our own country during the Second World War. How unfair of us. The BBC's attitude is very much like the New York Times. Combine the "I'm shocked to find that gambling is going on in here" line from Casablanca with the arrogance of, we are the BBC, we do not make mistakes. You must be mistaken about our mistake. And then add in a British political controversy over funding for the BBC and the BBC's clunky inability to handle politics at all. They somehow get and deserve criticism for occasionally leaning towards Labour, and they get criticism for occasionally leaning towards Conservatives, and now they get even more criticism for even more often leaning towards the fascist Reform Party. And the BBC is reportedly considering bribing Trump to drop the suit, even though Trump can't do anything to the BBC in America. The BBC News viewers pretty much consist of me and a couple of other people in America. And a lawsuit in England would almost certainly be kicked out of court. My God, BBC, you screwed this up. Correct that. And remember, Trump is crazy and guilty of the underlying principle here. So this is what you do. You issue that worldwide apology to everybody who has ever lived, and then you tell Trump to go F himself. And in fact, you debut a show that must run on BBC World News every night, half an hour, called Donald Trump Go F Yourself. And in that, by the way, you can send coded messages to the American resistance, just like you did in the Second World War with the French. You used to send messages to Charles de Gaulle on BBC Radio. You can send me secret messages. Otherwise, BBC, you will wind up like ESPN. ESPN on Tuesday achieved a new high in low. That is where we saw a new Trump symptom come out in public. Saying the quiet part out loud. Trump was the Veterans Day guest of the moronic ESPN daytime host Pat McAfee. Why would you have someone on who insulted a decorated veteran like John McCain because he was a POW? Why would you have them on Veterans Day? Or who symbolically spat on the dead at Belleau Wood from the First World War by calling them suckers and losers? Why would you have him on Veterans Day? Well, one, this Pat McAfee is an imbecile. Two, Pat McAfee has never asked a difficult question of anyone, even just another jock in his life. And three, Trump then said the quiet part out loud. McAfee said, "Thanks for joining us on the show." And Trump said, "I'm only joining you because I hear you say such nice things about me. When people say nice about me, I join. When they don't say nice about me, I take a pass." So what you had here, in addition to Trump saying the quiet part out loud, was you had ESPN's resident fluffer platforming America's resident he who must always be fluffed. And by the way, not only confessing there, but inventing yet another new phrase that has never been used by anybody else in the history of the world. People say nice about me. It's nice things, Donald. People say nice about me. People say nice about me. Maybe they're just not saying enough nice about him at the Miracle Mile Mall in Pennsylvania, which is in Chicago. So send in the troops to Las Vegas. Also of interest here, so the latest Kash Patel scandal, his girlfriend is suing a series of right-wing podcasters for claiming that she, who Patel goes to see using a government plane at taxpayer expense, claiming these right-wing podcasters did, and she is suing over this, the claim that she's actually a spy. Keep your eye on the prize, Kash. That's next. This is Countdown.
This is Countdown with Keith Olbermann.
Believe it or not, there's still more new idiots to talk about. The roundup of the miscreants, moron, and Dunning-Kruger effect specimens who constitute today's other worst persons in the world. The bronze shared by some of the Senate quislings. Now, you may remember from the previous episode that I spent rather a lot of time talking about these 8 fatheads, 7 of whom are nominal Democrats, and 1 is an independent. And of course, there's Fetterman, who's independent of reality. But since I did the previous edition of this podcast, as those 8 quislings defected and collaborated with the Nazis of today, let me just read you the new quotes that occurred after that. Senator Jeanne Shaheen on Fox and Friends. First off, you're on Fox and Friends, you're out of the club. I believe there are a number of Republicans who are going to join us in trying to address health care costs. We're going to be able to continue to fight about health care because we're going to have a vote in December. Hon, new Susan Collins just dropped. Dick Durbin. Senator Durbin went up to Leader Thune during the vote Sunday night to tell him that on the shutdown vote and ACA promise that 8 of us are sticking our neck out that you're going to keep your word. I hope you will. Thune said, I assure you I will. Imagine growing into old age like Dick Durbin, and the last thing you will be remembered for is believing a Republican promise. You have this vote, then you lose it, and you're going to claim a victory. But the best of them, Angus King. On Morning Joe. You're on Morning Joe, you're also out of the club. Standing up to Donald Trump didn't work. Angus, I have one question for you. How the F would you know about that? Exactly when in this process did you stand up to Donald Trump, you stupid, limp, flaccid old man? You know, years ago, there was a lawsuit over this. Jack in the Box ran an ad, a TV ad, that was directed towards the Carl's Jr. and Hardee's Angus burger. And a bunch of the executives at Jack in the Box were shown in this ad laughing their heads off and asking, what part of the cow is the Angus? Well, it turns out we have an answer to that question. What part of the cow is the Angus? Well, the senator from Maine who sold out the Democrats. Runner-up, the Trump administration and Bill Pulte, the mortgage guy who's trying to get people prosecuted for things his own parents did. Two things.
Pulte apparently is the one who convinced Trump to support the idea of the 50-year mortgage instead of 30s, although Trump thinks they're 40s. Because, well, I mean, if you can get people to spend their lifetime in debt to a bank, they'll be more servile and they'll do what you want, and you can control them through things like interest rates. I will tell you this, having grown up in the period of time in which there was no question that you were supposed to grow up and own your own home. I have owned 5 homes around the country. I've owned condos and a beautiful house in Connecticut. And if you're going to live in the same place and you're going to live there for a year longer than your mortgage, go ahead and buy it. It makes sense then economically. The rest of the time, you're effing yourself. Rent, don't buy. You're only going to be there 20 years? Rent, don't buy. 30-year mortgage, 30 years you're going to be there, coin toss. 30-year mortgage, you're going to live there for 30 years and 6 months, okay, you can buy. Otherwise, you're going to lose money long term. You're going to lose money. You're going to lose money. When you sell, even if you make a huge profit, you're still going to lose money. Invest in something that doesn't get other people profits. A 50-year mortgage? That's a great idea. So when you die, you'll still owe money. Second point, Fannie Mae is going to drop its credit score minimum for mortgages. It's going to drop it from lower than 620 to Mortgage Giant will instead use its own analysis of risk factors. Officials say they're easing barriers to borrowing. It's just the latest in a series of policy changes aimed at creating home ownership opportunities in the United States. Bullshit! It's a chance for them to make more mortgages and make money off the mortgage process. And then, if you don't pay, and if millions of you don't pay or can't pay later on, we'll just go through what we went through in 2008. And all of these companies will come running to the forefront and say, the economy will crater if you don't give us the money that we wasted on all these mortgages that where there never was a chance of anybody being able to afford them because we gave them to people who didn't have not only their own homes, but their own shoes. They're setting up another 2008 financial collapse. Mark it down. How many years would this be about in the future? Like the 2032 financial collapse, thanks to Fannie Mae and Bill Pulte and Trump, and a 50-year mortgage. Why not a 3,000-year mortgage? Yes, I'm paying off this mortgage my great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, the caveman, signed up for. And still there's somebody worse than this. Our winner, Kashyap Pramod Patel, good old Cash of the FBI, who, believe it or not, is still the director of the FBI, even though he never seems to go to work, or in fact, never seems to do anything but get on government planes and fly to Nashville to see the girlfriend who is supposedly a country singer, unless you are a right-wing podcaster, in which case I can't figure this out. Let me just read this from the Times of India, because I'll be effed if I can figure this route out without an alpenstock and a couple of St. Bernards. Right-wing podcaster Candace Owens has now called for FBI Director Kash Patel's resignation after his girlfriend Alexis Wilkins sued Elijah Schaffer for $5 million. Schaffer, a MAGA podcaster, reposted a thread on the viral conspiracy theory that Wilkins is a Mossad agent, and she honey-trapped Kash Patel. Schaefer did not add anything on his part to the viral thread, but posted a photo of Patel with his girlfriend. Schaefer became the third MAGA operative to have been sued by Kash Patel's girlfriend, the other two being Kyle Seraphin, a former FBI agent, and Sam Packer, an influencer. Wilkins repeatedly dismissed these conspiracy theories about her and asserted that she has no connection with Israel, never been there, and she's been dating Kash Patel before Patel became the FBI director. As the conspiracy theory is being churned by MAGA insiders, the Times of India continues, it is clear that Patel has been isolated inside MAGA, and now Candace Owens has openly called for Patel's resignation. Quote, Kash Patel has to step down. This is excruciatingly embarrassing. He's a teenager in love representing the federal government. When Candace Owens thinks you are embarrassing, I'm thinking you're embarrassing. The idea is Patel is being attacked by Candace Owens and other MAGA nut jobs because the MAGA nut jobs say the girlfriend is a spy. Now, she doesn't have a biography anywhere online that I could find, but this is from Fox News, quote, her father worked for Gillette and her mother was in aerospace and pharmaceuticals. They lived in England and Switzerland before settling in Fayetteville, Arkansas when Alexis was 9. She attended Collège du Le Mans International School in Switzerland. All right, England, Switzerland, Arkansas. In the same interview, Wilkins said that her father had served in the U.S. Navy during the Korean War. He was the son of Armenian immigrants who fled genocide. My passion for veterans started through conversations with him. England, Switzerland, Arkansas, Switzerland for college, Korea, Manchurian candidate, Armenia. Sounds legit to me. Just to add one twist to this, the latest podcaster to get sued, Schaefer, he has now asked for help defending himself from the suit from Elon Musk. Everybody's in this party. Kash, everything seems on the level to me. He's not going to suddenly disappear, then turn up in Botswana having obtained political asylum. No, never. No, he's not. He's never going to do that. No, Patel, today's other worst person in the world. Candace Owens thinks you're embarrassing. I play the organ on that myself. I've done all the damage I can do here. Thank you for listening. Most of our countdown music was arranged, produced, and performed by Brian Ray and John Philip Chanel, the musical directors of Countdown. It was produced by TKO Brothers. Mr. Ray on guitars, bass, and drums. Mr. Chanel handled orchestration and keyboards. Our satirical and pithy musical comments are by the best baseball stadium organist ever, Nancy Faust. The Olbermann theme from ESPN2 is the sports music, courtesy of ESPN Inc., and written by Mitch Warren Davis. Other music arranged and performed by the group No Horns Allowed. My announcer today was my friend Jonathan Banks. The program was produced by Ted. Everything else was, as always, my fault. The next countdown for today, day 297 of America Held Hostage Again. Just 1,166 days until the scheduled end of his lame duck and lame-brained term, unless he is removed sooner by MAGA, Epstein, the pavement patch on his hand, Tylenol, the jet made of poop, the Alzheimer's test 6 months from now, the difference between the Miracle Mile and the Magnificent Seven. Oh, boy. The next scheduled countdown is Monday. Until then, I'm Keith Olbermann. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, And wait for it. Good luck.